Today is March 26, 2024. I'm here at the village with Joan Ricks. My name is Agnieszka Ilwicka-Karuna. Behind the camera is Miss Deborah Hendricks, and this is Art of Aging, a part of Samuel Proctor Oral History program at University of Florida. Joan Ricks, do I have your permission to record this interview?
Yes, you have my permission.
Thank you very much. We would like to begin the story of your life with your oldest memories from childhood. What do you remember?
Well, the oldest memory that I have of my childhood was when I was about 2 or 2.5 years. And that seems a little strange that I would remember that. But I had my tonsils and adenoids taken out. And it was a very traumatic experience. I lived on a farm, and we had to go into the town. And the doctors, Dr. Jackson and Dr. Douglas, had their offices up on the second floor of a building. And they put me in a chair, very similar to a barbershop chair. And Dr. Douglas held me down while they put ether on to put me to sleep. And I kicked the fire out of him. I remember just reaching up with my foot and whamming him. And I guess they took him out because I went home. And the next day, I was running around out in the yard chasing chickens because we lived on a farm. And the Dr. Jackson came out to visit me to see how I was doing. That's back in the days when doctors visited you at your home. And I was eating a peanut butter and cracker. And he said, well, I guess she's doing okay. So that's my earliest memory of my life. And when I was 6 years old, I had my adenoids or tonsils, one or the other, removed again because I guess they didn't get it all and it grew back. So anyway, that's the earliest memory. But
Can you please tell me about your birthplace and the circumstances of your birth?
Well, I don't remember my birthplace, but I do remember it being discussed. And I lived on a farm, and my father was what they call a sharecropper. His parents had a farm, but this was during the days of Depression, and I guess he needed to go elsewhere to make some money. I don't really know. We probably were very poor, but I never thought that we were poor. I think everybody was poor during Depression. But it was on the farm, and I was born in August the 2nd, 1934. And I often think about my mother. We had no air condition, and I was born at home, and it was hot in August. And I have a feeling she was so glad to get rid of me out of her. And I had an older brother, and he was born a year and 12 days before I was. So we were often playmates because it was that's the only person I had to play with, except my dolls.
Do you know who else supported your birth? Were there any doctors, nurses, midwives?
No. I think my father's, from what I remember hearing, was my father's sister was there. They often, and she had no children, so I don't know how she knew what to do, but since I wasn't there and I'm here today, I guess it worked, whatever they did.
Mm-hmm. What were the names of your parents?
My father was named Beverly Jackson Forrester. The Jackson was after the doctor, Dr. Jackson. And my mother was Lydia. black forester.
Mm-hmm.
And
were they born in America?
yeah, they were in America. And this was in West Tennessee, the state of Tennessee, near Jackson, Tennessee, north of Memphis. And it's where I grew up, in that vicinity. My both sets of grandparents, we visited often. The first 2 years of my life, I lived with my paternal grandparents. They had a large 2-story white house out in the country, and we lived upstairs. And I don't remember much about the house at all, but my mother and I were at her sister-in-law's. My father's sister was giving birth to a little boy, and she was there helping with that. And nearby the house, the family had given land for a school to be built. And at school, they were playing softball. Men were, I guess, baseball. Women play softball. Baseball. And my grandmother was by herself, and the house caught on fire. And they all rushed down because it's out in the country and you don't have fire hose, but they got a lot of furniture out. I still have some of the furniture, and some of the things that were saved out of that house. And so a lot of my little clothes and all were burned. But my grandparents rebuilt a house, not that house, but a smaller house for them. And then we moved. And maybe that was the reason. No, I don't know, because that was after I was born. So we moved to another house nearby, and Daddy farmed with my grandparents. And I remember going out in the fields. And
what was this experience of losing your personal belongings in fire?
I'm sorry?
I'm asking you about this experience of losing your personal belongings in fire.
Listen, well, as a child, I don't remember what I had.
But do you remember your feelings?
No, I do not remember any. I really don't. I was not at the fire, so I did not see it. Had I been there, I might have had some memory of it. But I don't know what happened to me when my mother and I came back. Or that there's just a whole lot of things I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember us living in another house nearby, and I have a lot of memories in that house.
Mm-hmm.
And that's little china set up here. We used to get Sears and Roebuck catalog, and that was a great thing to get as a child because we didn't get to go shopping much, but we could look through the catalog. So the Christmas catalog came out, and I saw those little dishes, and they had forks and spoons and napkins to go with them, and I wanted that so badly. And so sure enough, I got that set, but I didn't get the forks and spoons and the napkins, and I wanted those. But that's probably all my parents could afford. But I have all the pieces except one. I broke it. So my brother and I used to drink coffee out of those little cups. And that was, my mother would give us some ham, country ham, and we would cook it, and then we would eat it and we had our own little tea parties, I guess. And I don't know who's going to get them. No one seems to want them. Mm-hmm. But I've saved them a lot. But I remember getting dolls and baby buggies, little buggy, different things. We always got a sock full of fruit. Being in Tennessee, we did not have oranges, and but we always got an orange for Christmas, and we got apples, and we got various kind of candies, and Brazil nuts. I remember the Brazil nuts; they were hard to crack, and we always, and we had a Christmas tree at Christmas, and we had no electricity. That was before the Tennessee Valley Authority. That came about in 1942. And Daddy's cousin that lived in town came out one day after we got electricity and at Christmas time and brought us our first string of lights, Christmas tree lights. And we just thought that was something to have lights on our Christmas tree.
How old were you?
Well, in 1942, I would have been about 8 years. Let's see. I was from 34, from 12. I would have been about, you do the math.
You were born in 1934, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yes, so you were.
So I was about 8 years old, I guess. But we went to school there. My brother was a year ahead of me in school, and he often brought home all the measles and the chicken pox and all that sort of thing. I remember I had chicken pox, and I guess it was a wife's story, like wife's tale. If you let a chicken fly over you, your chicken pox would go away. So my mother took me outside and let a chicken fly over me. What good that did, I don't know. But I remember my brother bringing home measles, and my mother got it. So she was sick. And Daddy tried to make biscuits one time. And that cabinet over there on the wall, that one over there, that's what we had. That was our kitchen cabinet. And the porcelain would fill out, and he would try to knead the dough on that porcelain. But he made a joke out of it. He was always joking around with us about it. One time he went and took some corn into the town to have it processed or sell or something, and he came back with a stalk of bananas, not just a little bunch, but a whole big stalk. And that he hung them in the ceiling in the kitchen, and we had bananas. We'd climb up on the table and pull off a banana and eat it. And that was a big treat. And he loved banana pudding. He said he wished he had a faucet he could turn on and banana pudding would come out.
How did you make banana pudding?
Well, it's a egg custard cooked, and you would put vanilla wafers down in a pan in a bowl and slice bananas, and then pour the custard on it. Put another layer of vanilla wafers and bananas, and put custard on that. And usually they whipped egg whites and put on top, and then brown that. And it was good.
Sounds delicious.
It was good. We had plenty of eggs and milk because we were on a farm. And I think that's the reason during the Depression, I never remembered ever going hungry, because we had a garden and we had the cows and the chickens and the eggs, and we had hogs, so we had pork to eat. We did not eat much beef, and yeah, going to that little school was interesting. And then we the we had some lady came and lived with my grandparents. The school was between our house and my grandparents, a short distance. And she lived with my grandparents, and she would cook our meals, make soup for us. And I remember getting a whole lot of apples. They must have come from the government on their donated foods. Uh, and our teacher gave each of us an apple. And since we had no place to wash and clean our apple, she just told us to rub it real a lot on our clothes to get, I guess, all the germs off. And we ate that apple, and it was really good. But I went, I was in that little school, and I have a picture of that little school, um, until the fourth grade, third. And then we moved into town, which was 5 miles away, and I started going to school there. And that was the beginning of World War II. And since my father was a farmer, he was not drafted into the war, but he did quit farming and went to help build buildings in another town nearby where they produced ammunition. So I guess, these things were never discussed in front of me. It just happened, I guess. The and then they built a factory in my town that made shoes, Buster Brown shoes. And so both my parents started working there. And they would drive from our country home 5 miles into town to work and come back. And my brother and I would walk from the school down to my grandparents' house, and we would wait for my parents to come. My grandfather would say, "There they come, there they come." And we would run and look out the front window, and it would not be my parents, it would be somebody else. And he would say, "Ha ha ha, it was them, but it's not your parents." He liked to make jokes too. But anyway, every Friday they brought a candy bar for each of us. They got paid on Friday, and the candy bar was a payday. So we got paid for that. I mean, that was our pay. But
What did you do with your personal egg?
my personal,
Yeah, with the pay.
it was a candy. I ate it.
I see.
I got a candy bar payday, and I still love those payday candy bars. They're quite good because they have a lot of peanuts on them. So I feel like they're more nutritious than some of the others. I remember one time living in that house out in the country, my brother and I opened one of the drawers and there was something in it. And we opened it up and it was chocolate. And we thought, gee, Mama did not tell us we had some chocolate. So we ate it. And later we found out it was X-Lax. So yeah, we got into trouble a lot. And I was always afraid of the animals in the barnyard, but we did have a little pony, and my aunt and uncle gave it to us, and it was blind. And I have a picture in here of that with my brother riding that, and we had a saddle, and he had a cowboy outfit to wear with it, and I would sit behind him on the pony, and we'd go over to my grandparents on that pony. Those were good days, weren't they? And
Sounds like.
yeah, just doing things. I had cousins that lived in Memphis, and one of them, they were older than I, and they came up one time, the male cousin, Lewis, and we all went out to the pond and somebody caught a frog, and my grandmother cooked that frog, and it was good. Big old bullfrog, and fried frog is good. Restaurants, some nice restaurants serve it.
So she fried the frog.
Yeah, if you've ever taken botany, you know that you've got to cut a tendon in there, and if the leg would jump. So she knew what to do. But my cousin wanted to know which cow gave the chocolate milk. He was a joke. He liked to have jokes too, and so he entertained my brother and I. Which cow had chocolate milk?
What language or languages were spoken at your home?
English.
Only? Did you have any neighbors that were speaking other languages than
No.
English?
We all were, and we did not have slaves in our communities either. There were black people that lived in town, and I remember one time a black man was out at our house, and my father invited him in to eat, and he refused to come in the house. That was something that you just didn't do. But Daddy always was really nice to the black people. And later in life, he said that he had more friends that were black, good friends. So anyway, but anyway, we did move into town. I was in the 4th grade, and the teacher would have us, for spelling, she would have us to stand around the room. And we had heated the pipes to heat the room. Radiators were around there, and I would often burn my legs. And I hated that. I didn't like to get up and stand and say and spell the word. So I figured it out. The first hard word, miss it and sit down. And that's what I did. I missed it on purpose so that I could sit down and not have to stand up there in front of everybody. And it was just my classmates, but I still didn't like to do that. When I was small, I was a very shy person. I often, people came to our house, I would run behind the doors and hide. One of the things that we did when we were little we had eggs, and we had a man with a truck that let down the sides, and he had everything on that truck. And that was a very common thing. And this is where you bartered. We took our little egg down and gave it to him, and he would allow us to have a piece of candy. And we looked forward. We called him the hoodlum man. Hoodlum, I guess the horn. Hoodoo, hoodoo, hoodoo. But he would park out in front of our house, and we'd run out with our little egg, and that was something that people nowadays would not know what to do with that. We also, since we did not have electricity, we had an ice box, and that was well insulated, and the iceman on it with big chunks of ice would come, and in your window you would put how many pounds you want, 10, 20, or what, and he would chip off the amount and bring it in and put it in your box. And that was how we kept our food cold. But the sanitation back then was unbelievable, and I wonder how people survived, because if you cooked a big meal at noon, you just pushed it to the back of the range and let it sit there and had it at night. And no refrigeration. Now, it has to be refrigerated every two hours after it's cooked. And so, it's different. But there's just a lot of things in my early childhood I remember. And then I
Do you remember any songs from this early childhood?
Well, Jesus Loves Me. And when I was in the 6th grade, my teacher, Mr. Lett, had apparently he liked me, and he and his wife lived down the street from us in town, and he had a performance in Easter, and that is something I just came across the pictures the other day, and we had big round and our hats were made out of crepe paper, and we had, I don't remember our dresses, but we sang In Your Easter Bonnet with all the frills upon it.
Can you sing that a little bit?
No, I can't sing it. In your Easter bonnet with all the frills upon it, I'll be the da 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 in the Easter parade. And then also, I was a bride in some Sunday morning. What was that song? Some Sunday morning. Anyway, there was a song about that, and we sang that, and I marched in as the bride. And my boyfriend was the groom. Now, I had a classmate, and I'm not going to tell her name, but she made 99.99 on everything. Nobody could ever beat her. I don't care how hard I tried. I never can beat her. So Mr. Lett taught us how to write cursive, And I thought, this you don't have to have brains for. You just have to skill. And I'm left-handed. I beat her. I was so happy I beat her. And I still use my beautiful handwriting. And I often think about her. But that was one thing that I challenged myself to do. And but we went on into school. I was very active in my church.
What was your church?
The United Methodist Church. And active in the the MYF, Methodist Youth Member, MYF, Methodist Youth Fellowship. And we had a lot of fun with that. We had meetings at night on Sunday after the church, and oftentimes all the young people would come up to our house, and Daddy and my mother welcomed them in and had food for them to eat and that sort of thing. So we had a good time with that. One year in high school, my girlfriends and I decided we would have a Come As You Are party. Now, I don't know if you know what that is, but we got up early on Sunday morning, and I was able to drive a car by that time, and went around to our friend's house and gathered them all up, come as you are, right out of bed, down to the church. And I used to have pictures. I don't know if I still have those pictures or not, but that was a lot of fun just to bring people together early in the morning. And Daddy decided, he was the Sunday school superintendent, and he decided that he would have me to give the devotion on Sunday morning. And there would be about 250 people there. And here I am in school, having to work up a devotion. I got a little devotion book. I still have that little book. And just a short something. But I have used that experience so much later in my life. It gave me the ability to stand up in front of people to talk. he decided also that I should have expression lessons. And so there was a lady in my hometown that gave those lessons to people, and that helped me later too. And as a result, I'm now a reader in our village players, and it's just, and I've made presentations at national conferences and state conferences, and I was in the plays, the junior and senior high school plays, and my principal one time, I said, I'm so nervous. And he said, that's good. You should be nervous. It makes you do better. So I've often thought about that. And I've used all of that experience to help other people to get up and perform and to do it better. But when you think back over when I think back over a lot of my experiences, there was a purpose, I guess, in doing some of those things, because it's helped me in later life to be a better professional and to do things that I always just did things. My friends and I, we had a bicycle in high school, and in the summertime we rode all over the county. One day I know we rode 20 miles down to my other grandparents and back around another town and back home. And I wouldn't have any child do that now. It'd be like riding from here to Alachua and back down to Gainesville. And young girls, no way. So things were so different then. And
How old were you when you learned how to drive a car?
I was 16, and I had gotten the book and studied, and my brother, who was a year older, I was already driving. He drove when he was like 13, and he knew how to turn on the car without a key even. One Sunday afternoon, he and my parents were gone, and we were at home, and he got the car started, and we drove around town. But he taught me a lot how to drive. We had a few hills, and we would go to those, and that's when they had stick shift cars, no automatic. And I would have to go up that hill and stop, and then use the clutch and the brake, and I'd roll back down the hill. And I would get so angry. But anyway, I studied the book, and Daddy took me to the county courthouse to get my license, and we had to take the test, and then we had to do a driver's test, and I made 100 on the written test. I was just going to get a permit, but I made 100, and Daddy said, well, why don't you just try to get your license? So I remember the highway patrolman that went with me. He said, well, you're going to make a good driver. And I really did. I loved to drive. And I got my license then. I didn't get a learner's permit. I just got my license. And I have driven a lot all over the country. I love to drive. And big towns and little towns. And it's just, I didn't learn to swim, though. I had to learn to swim in college. I went to college. I was very active in the home economics program in my high school, participated in a lot of the things. I was the president of the Future Homemakers of America in my home school. I was a cheerleader I was really active. I was one of the more outgoing persons. And I was still shy. But I guess this was helping me to not be so shy. And I lost my train of thought there. But
We were talking about your swimming lessons. How did you learn?
well, we had a swimming pool in another town, and on Sunday afternoon, Daddy would take us there. And I didn't like it because my brother and his friends went along with my friends and I. And so they wanted to splash us with water and swim under and pull us down in the water. And I didn't like that. So I didn't much like to swim. But in college, we had to learn to swim, pass the Red Cross test. And I learned to float and do a few things and bobble in water. Swimming, I was not a natural swimmer, but I overcame my fear for swimming. But I went to the University of Tennessee, Martin Branch, my first 2 years, which was about 35 miles from my home. I lived in a dorm with my high school friend. She went too. There were several of us that went there, and we all majored in home economics. And it was a 4 year. It just started being a 4 year college. It had been a junior college, and then my sophomore year, I majored in textiles. Well, actually, home economics, but I was interested in textiles mainly. And so I decided I wanted to transfer to the University of Tennessee in Knoxville because if you got your teacher's certificate uh, there, you got what they called a Smith Hughes, and you could make more money. And I thought, well, if I'm going to teach, I want to make as much money as I could. So I went there. Daddy drove and took me there. That was before the superhighways were just local roads, and it took all day. It's 450 miles from my home to Knoxville. So you get up in the mountains, you can't pass, and local people kept us from passing. But I moved in, and so I went my last 2 years there. And when I got ready to graduate, I went to the dean's office and to inquire about any job offerings. And the secretary to the dean said, "Well, only thing you can do is teach." And I said, "But Dean Harris in her 101 orientation class said we could do anything." How naive I was. But she said, with a home economics degree, you could do most anything. So I decided then I'm not going to teach. After doing my teacher training, I became what they call an agriculture extension home agent. And I worked and did that in Somerville, Tennessee. It was a very rural county for 3.5 years, and decided I wanted to go back and get my master's in foods and work with a company as a test kitchen manager. And I didn't know what all that meant, but I had read enough that it interested me. So the extension offered me a scholarship or program that I could go back and get my master's, but then I would have to go back and do extension in so many years to help pay off that. So I turned that down because I didn't want to be obligated. I wanted to do what I wanted to do when I finished.
Which was what?
Well, I wanted to work in foods. I wanted to be in a test kitchen person, experimental. And so, sure enough, upon completion, I had changed from a specialization of textiles and clothing to food. So that meant I had to take additional organic chemistry and a lot of types of chemistry to get that degree. So I had to go a little bit more than a year to get all that undergraduate stuff out of the way. And when I got ready to graduate, Pet Milk Company in St. Louis was advertising for a test kitchen manager. And I just wanted to work in a test kitchen. But nevertheless, I applied, and they flew me to St. Louis. That was my first plane ride. And I remember I went and had a manicure. I wanted my hands to look pretty. Why? I don't know. I didn't think about my hair. But anyway, I interviewed, and I had a letter from them saying that I was accepted. My salary was $5,200 a year. That was, my major professor said that was more than she was making as a professor. So she was really pleased with her student. And when I worked as my first job at Agriculture Extension, I started out at $3,500 a year. I made a lot more than that a month when I retired. But in 3.5 years, I saved enough money to go back to graduate school. I did have a $500 scholarship from American Dietetic Association. But it was just really how we could live on such small amounts. And I had a car, too. That was another thing. When I graduated with my bachelor's degree and went into extension, I had to have a car. And Daddy bought me this really nice Pontiac sedan that was 2 years old, that an older couple had had. And it certainly was an older couple car. It was not a young person car. But that car lasted well into when I traded it in St. Louis, and I got a Falcon. Those had just come out, Ford Falcons. But I really enjoyed my work in Pet Milk Company. We developed recipes, we developed cookbooks, we tested new products, we developed new products. We did industry studies on evaporated milk, whether if we reduced the fat, would that recipe still work? We had, I was the manager of the test kitchen. We had 4 test kitchen home economists under me. We had 2 kitchens. One was all electric, one was all gas, even a gas refrigerator. We got rid of that one, though, eventually. But I learned a lot. And it was a wonderful experience to live in St. Louis. And I met a lot of people, and I loved St. Louis. And but it came a time that I decided I needed to move on. I was in my late 20s, early 30s, I guess. I was during the time in St. Louis, I decided I wanted to travel. So I went to Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, and really had a wonderful time. Interested. I was the youngest person on the tour group. Everybody else had retired, teachers and whatever, but they accepted me and took me right into their lives, and it was a fun experience. But I wanted to do something else, and I wanting to come back more south out of the cold. It was a lot of ice and cold weather up there, hot in the summer. Um, and I was so thankful that I did get an air conditioned car. We didn't have air conditioning in cars at one time, so that was really good. And looked around at jobs and everything that was available was like Battle Creek, Michigan, or Hoboken, New Jersey. Uh, I interviewed for very well known companies, but I just didn't want to go to those places. So a friend that was in graduate school with me worked for the United States Department of Agriculture in Atlanta, and she told me about two jobs either in Atlanta for the state of Georgia or in Florida in Tallahassee with the Department of Education in working with the school feeding programs. And I said, well, I don't know anything about that. She said, we've had the same classes. I know you can do the job. So I applied to the one in Florida, the one in Atlanta, which I would like to have gone to because I had friends living there, would not interview me until the one in Florida made up her mind, and they accepted me in Tallahassee. So I went to Tallahassee, and I worked there about 16 years in the Department of Education and Food and Nutrition Services, and traveled all over the state to federal regulations and turned them into guidelines and set up programs in private schools for feeding children, daycare centers. It's a marvelous thing. I always felt like I was a missionary, helping people. And I think that's when I really learned to be more aware of people that did not have food to eat.
Back then, what did you consider was your best achievement professionally?
But
Back then, at your job, what you consider the best achievement?
setting up programs, breakfast programs for children on a Monday morning came and they did not have any food over the weekend. I've been in schools early on Monday morning and kids would come and they would eat food from other kids' plates just because they weren't fed. Many of our schools and fed bigger meals on Friday and bigger meals on Monday. More nutritious, not more nutritious, but more filling. And the daycare programs, uh, that was something that I was aghast when I went to a meeting in Jacksonville to help people learn to come on the federal program to get money for their food programs, for the daycare programs. And a lady that came had a little child, a cute little girl. And I asked, is that your grandchild? And she said, no, this is one of the children that was here at my school, and the parents had not come for her today. That just broke my heart. Can you imagine? I cannot imagine how that child must have felt. And she said that happens often. Why people have children that they don't care for, I don't know. I have no children, but I consider all of these. I used to come back from some of these visits working with those little children and talking to them and all, and say, I'm going to set up a child care center for 1 hour. That's about all I could take. But feeding children is such a and we get a lot, the school feeding program get a lot of criticism about not good food, but the food is, my food that I was served was good. We bought as good food as we could. We were only required to give so much, and I saw that it was the best that we could get. We don't have a lot of money, and it is so totally different now. And I'm so glad that they've made some more changes so that all children can get fed. We went through all that free and reduced, and you had to make applications, and based on the money, whether you could get free meals or a reduced price meal or pay. And I think one of the things that when I came after so many years, I applied for the job down here. I never wanted to work in a county, but one day I was down in this county, and the assistant supervisor was going to retire, and for some reason I decided I'd like to have that job. So I applied, and I did get it. And trying to do the best that I could in feeding children,
I would like to stay a little longer in this subject because, given your life experience and expertise, this is our opportunity also to record your observations from your, also the challenging moments at your professional work. So I would like to ask first, how serious was this issue? How serious was the hunger issue at different stages of your professional career in America, in your work territory?
I think I noticed the seriousness of when I worked for the Department of Education in Tallahassee. That's when we started the free and reduced price meal. And my boss was very active nationally, and she worked with the legislature in Washington. And she was there, and she came home with a set of regulations. And I took those and I turned them into guidelines to be used. And our other associates, we went all over the state getting those done. This was a revelation to a lot of people. A lot of people did not like it. And even though the children needed to be fed, I've been in a school in a small town in central Florida one day, and a little boy and a girl were not eating lunch. And I asked the principal, and the principal said, I said, could I buy them the lunch? And he said, no, the parents, you cannot buy. They do not want the parents. I said, well, could I buy just milk for them? He said, yes. So I bought them out of my own pocket some milk to drink. They had no food to eat. I've been in a school when another set of children, a little boy and a girl, had a headache, and they came into the nurse's office where I was in looking at the applications, free and reduced applications, and they had a headache, and I talked to the principal about it, and they had not eaten, and they said that the parents were punishing them and withholding the food. Now, this to me is child abuse, pure and simple child abuse, and I just can't understand. But we started, after I retired, through our church, the United Methodist Women's Group, we started the backpack program where we bought food, and some of us put together the food for the children to take home on weekends and on special holidays so they have some food to eat. we don't know how badly some of these children do not have food. Um, I tried to offer, when I was in this county, I offered the salad bars for the little elementary school kids. And it was a wonderful thing because some of them had never had that kind of food. I remember one school we started and we had cottage cheese on the salad bar. But the manager had never served cottage cheese. She didn't know how well the kids, she ran out of cottage cheese. I was so proud. I, I had corn on the cob, and that was not the right thing to do for kids that didn't have teeth, but I wanted them to have that experience of eating it. And went to one school here in Gainesville to see how well it was going on, and the kids were so happy with it. And when I was left, one of the boys said, I had 5. He had swapped some things on his plate so he could have 5 ears of corn. Poor little thing, he probably went to the bathroom all night long. But I like to do things. I worked with Krispy Kreme Donut Company here in town. We served donuts at breakfast once per month. It's not going to kill you once per month. And yet I had criticism from parents. A child needs something different. And I worked with them and I said, can you put orange and blue sprinkles on these donuts? They had not done that at the company. So they did. We had them. And we had them on a Friday before a game day. And the kids just thought that was we had Jell-O. And I would say, make some blue Jell-O and orange Jell-O, cut it in cubes and serve it together. Just for something that food is fun. And even if you, and I think it's fun, it should be fun for the kids that don't get much food too. I'm sure that some of these schools do not have, some of the homes do not have people who know how to even fix food. It's just amazing. One year for Thanksgiving, a teacher wanted to have the kids bring food from home and they would have like a smorgasbord of food in their classroom. And I heard about it and I went to the principal and I said, I'd like to talk about this. Now, first of all, the sanitation of all the kitchens of these kids. We have your standard, the standard child in that classroom. Are you sure? And I said, the food is going to be brought in that morning and it's going to be held to noon and it's not going to be refrigerated. We will not accept it in our kitchens. It's not our food. We cannot put it in there. And I said, are you willing to have food poisoning? And I went over all these things with him. And finally he said, no, we will not do this. And I said, what I will do, we will have some bowls and if they would like to have it in their room, we will fix and get it to them and they can do that way. We did picnics for kids that go off, wanting to go like Littlewood over to West Side Park or wherever. So we did a lot of things to help them enjoy their food. But, it's a tough job. Wednesdays were early dismissal days. So we had to have food, the lunch period by state law regulations. There's a certain length of time that is allotted to eating. But this is really, they had to start at 9:30 for lunch, which, if you have a school of 700 and you have to allow 30 minutes for a class each child, it takes a long time to get all those kids through. And by the time that those kids that ate at 9:30, and this when the school let out, they were hungry again. And you see a lot of ones that can afford it go to McDonald's and get something. Because, it's so early in the morning to eat. But was not my responsibility at scheduling. My responsibility was seeing that the meal was there. And the principal had to schedule. And some of them, schools were overcrowded. An elementary school is supposed to be 536 kids, I think. And most of the elementary schools have 700 kids in them. It's a problem. And but I don't know. Anyway, it's a challenge.
Given your experience, do you think that things are better now?
Well, I don't really know what's going on now, but I know that they're doing a lot of different things. And we're looking at the budget. The school board does not put any money, one penny, into the lunch program. That all is federal money that comes down. And the school board can take some of that and put it into their budget. It leaves less money. And that money that comes down has to buy the salaries of the employees. The budget, when I was there, was 49% budget for employees. They get health benefits. We have to buy the toilet tissue that goes in our, we have to buy all the supplies, the paper towels, everything that is used in the kitchen had to come out of that budget. And so there was very little money left over for food, really. And trying to manipulate that was a really big challenge. But, and we had to stay in the black, not in the red. And the money, you buy the food, you cook it, and you serve it, and you turn your records in to the state office at the end of the month, and then 6 weeks later, you get the money from the government. So, it's it's a process, but we did make it, and we did start getting in the black. I was in the red when I took over, and the superintendent said, "You've got to stop doing that." We had to borrow money at the beginning of the school year, but at the end, when all the money came in, then it paid off the debt to the school board. But the taxpayers of Alachua County does not put any money into the feeding program. And it probably, now the school feeding program started in 1941, 42, and as a result of when the World War II, and you still read about it sometimes, the people that went into war were in such poor condition that they felt like the government had felt like they needed to do something. So they did not have a school feeding program until about 1942, when they started that to help preserve and nourish people so they would be stronger. So it's still going on. Now, today, they're doing a lot of different things. Now, if a school, and I think all the schools qualify because of the blending that they have in the schools, if a certain percentage is free and reduced, all the kids get a meal free. And therefore, they get more federal money that way. Uh, so I'm hoping that it's better.
When you were a child, did you see among your friends some people that were punished through food?
Punished for food?
Yeah, like for example, they weren't served meal because they misbehaved.
No. I wasn't that close to them. I know my mother packed my lunch, and we ate in the school. And it was often a biscuit with a piece of meat in it. What terrifies me now is to see some of the food that is packed and sent to school. Some people don't want their child to eat that food, and yet they will. I had one mother when I was working, and she was an educated person, said she packed lunch meat and sent in her kids. Now the lunch meat started out from home, say at 7 o'clock in the morning, to be eaten sometime later, not refrigerated. And they often don't get milk, and they need milk. Uh, my mother did not drink a lot of milk, and therefore I remember having cavities when I was 6 years old. And and right now I have bone loss, and the bone loss will start from your teeth first. So now I've got three fillings, three cavities, and I'm trying to buff up my calcium again because it can be replaced. Um, but people don't eat like they should, and you, as a dietitian and a person in the foods, they don't. I don't really tell people what to do. It's not accepted. I think sometimes our professions, people. I used to have people come into my house for meal, and my husband and I would often say, "Why don't we get invited?" And one time, a friend said, "Because your food is so good, I can't make food as good as you." I would just like to go. Just serve me what you want to. But they put you up on a pedestal sometimes. And yeah, I'm a good cook. I like to cook. My
Do you,
whole family.
do you still cook?
Not as much because we get our food here, and I find that I can't stand too long on my feet. My back gives out. But I still make angel food cake and pound cake and some breads, banana bread, different things like that, and I share it. Well, I sometimes wind up at that much. I share it to everybody, just a little piece, but I like to do things for people, and anyway, I'd like to do that. So,
I have a little odd question to you, but what food does it mean to you? What food does it mean to you?
what food does it mean? It's the nourishment of our life. We need it. It's part of our building blocks to nourish our bodies. Um, a cartoon that came out in the Commercial Appeal newspaper, back in 1970, I guess, showed a little black boy and said, "When it hurts here, I can't learn here." And that's so true. When you are hungry, and you probably don't get hungry very often because food is around us all the time, and we can go and get something to eat. I'm not hungry hardly ever. But when you are hungry and it hurts here, Your mind is here, and you just cannot think. I often wonder, they keep wanting to do things with kids learning and all. This is not in my field, but one of my managers, one of the schools, very low in income. That was back when. I retired in 96, so it's back when. They went to a meeting that had the staff meeting to help learn about students that they would be working with. And I remember her saying, children come to school sometimes when they have someone in their house has been killed, or they've seen a rape. And how can that child learn that day? The trauma. And they probably left home to go to school without even eating breakfast. When I worked at the Department of Education, the community nutritionists would bring the interns to our department to let us tell them about the school's eating program. And I was the person that usually got the students. For some reason, I'm always the person that gets everything. Like my boss says, all the memos that are sent out from this office has to go through Joan. Because I do write pretty good. But anyway.
But also you knew what to do.
Yeah. But anyway, these students, young girls, going to be nutritionists, one spoke up. I don't understand why these poor people can't fix a casserole. Casseroles are good. Why can't they just fix a casserole? That would be good, nutritious, and cheap. I let her talk and talk and talk. I said, well, they may not have a casserole dish. They may not even have measuring cups. And do you think they can read a recipe? Maybe the electricity was turned off and the refrigerator's not even working. Or they can't even use the oven. Put yourself in these situations of what happens and what can you do with those circumstances. I think so many of us think everybody is like us, and they're not. My first job was in a county that was 75% black. They lived in shacks on big plantations. Everybody had black people working for them. But I've seen people walking down the roads in that county with a soda pop and a bag of pop and chips. Well, they don't have a way of getting food. They have no way of getting good food. I was working in Miami one time on a series of training films for child care programs. And again, I was the person that was the contact person. And we were out shooting films of some child care program with kids. And there was the cutest little girl. I just thought she was so cute. And we were going to dip raw vegetables into cottage cheese. I had to teach them how to dip. And so she and I were talking, or I was talking to her. I said, do you drink milk at home? Mm-mm. What do you drink? Coca-Cola. Now, if you only had $5 and you're trying to spread it around to the whole meal, what would you buy? Milk is expensive. Soda pop, you can use, that's when you can buy a big liter for 99 cents. So these choices are made based on what they know and the money they have. And I don't know how to solve the problem. I try to understand it in my role of trying to feed children. I tried to do the best job I could and make food fun and happy and enjoyable. And over at Duval Elementary, we never had that salad bar open the first week of school because it was so chaotic. And I was over there one day, and these little black boys, when are we going to get our salad bar? We love our salad bar. It just did me so much good to see them. There's raw vegetables, good vegetables. And then after I retired, I found out that they had to be removed. All the salad bars were removed because of the sanitation. Kids apparently were not, it disturbs me sometimes. But what can I do? Well, I do have a brother, and he has a lot of children, 2 boys, and they have children, and I don't even tell them what to do. And I'm overweight, but I know partly the reason it's not all based on food. I have to sit too much, and when you get older, your metabolism slows down, and I don't exercise enough. I did ride the bike 6 minutes sometime this afternoon earlier, and I'm going to a birthday party at 6 o'clock tonight. So we're going to have to conclude this pretty soon.
Okay, we will. Deborah, do you have any questions?
I have one question that is maybe odd, but your desire for a career as a test kitchen manager is very specialized. I just don't know how you could come up with that.
Well, when I was working my first job, I got a lot of publications over my desk, and I started reading about General Foods in New York and their test kitchen, and I read about that, and I just thought that was so interesting. And you actually get rich food. I know that when I was majoring in textiles and clothing in undergraduate, we had a lot of lab work, which I didn't realize that we had to do. I was very good at that. And I wish I had taken advantage of some of it, but I didn't know. But I decided that I did not want to work in labs. I wanted to work with people. And I think and I loved cooking and experimenting with food. And I found that when I went back and started majoring in my food, that really was a niche that I liked to do. But reading about those jobs helped a lot, especially General Foods, which is the epitome. I don't think it is anymore, but it was then.
Mm-hmm. Given your life experience and life expertise, and looking back through various things that happened to you in life. Do you have any advice for the future generation to come, or just people that will watch this interview?
I think is to be open and explore things that come your way. I think you can do anything you want to do if you want to do it well enough. I did not believe that. I was encouraged to, when I was trying to decide about going back and getting my master's, I was encouraged by a doctor to go into the medical field and be a woman doctor. Well, not too many women doctors were back then. And I didn't think, I said, well, if I can't even spell some of the words and pronounce the words in bacteriology and zoology, how on earth can I ever be? But now I realize that if I really wanted to do that, I could have. And I think if you really want to do something, you will overcome those hurdles. And that is something that I try to encourage young people to do. If this is what you want to do, try it. And if you find you can't, you don't.
Thank you very much for this interview, and thank you for sharing your life expertise with us, people from the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program at University of Florida. We're looking forward to sharing your story with others. Thank you.
Okay.